We have arrived at the famous Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in Stavelot for the running of the Belgian Grand Prix, the longest track on the GP4OC calendar. Coming into this week, 3 teams have been making the headlines this week. The first team news of this year's silly season comes from Mercedes, as to the surprise of literally no one, so cue the memes again, they have announced that reigning world champion Franco Lopez and current championship contender Amar Kar will remain with the team for another season. Amar is having another great season at Mercedes despite his concern about the car during the early part of the season, mainly in qualifying. He currently lies second in the Drivers' Championship, 15 points behind championship leader Franco Gamba, and his team Mercedes lies second in the Constructors, also 15 points behind Red Bull. Despite this year's Mercedes being inconsistent during qualifying, he has usually made up for it in the races thanks to the brilliant race pace the Merc has had this season, which has kept him in the hunt for the title. He will hope to achieve his first ever world title by the end of the season and hope that next season's Mercedes will be better to drive in qualifying than it has been this season. In terms of Franco Lopez, despite a rough start to the season, he has finally started to pick up form despite not winning a race so far this season. He currently lies 4th in the Drivers' Championship, tied for 3rd with George Roque, and as mentioned earlier, his team Mercedes currently lies 2nd in the Constructors, 15 points behind Red Bull. Lopez arguably should have had a win this season, with Austria being the most notable when he was leading the race before sustaining damage from the wheel of Jesus Perrinen's Renault as a result of him sustaining damage from his teammate Evan Byrne's car. Franco will be hoping to get back to winning ways in the second half of the season and hope he can gain enough ground to win his 3rd world title and then defend it the following season. The second team news of the day comes from AlphaTauri, as they have announced that German driver David Kupok will remain with the team for another season. David is having an amazing year in 2021, despite this year's AlphaTauri being arguably the worst car on the grid. He currently lies 20th in the Drivers' Championship, 2 points behind fellow German Felix Sonntag, and his team AlphaTauri lie 9th in the Constructors, 1 point behind Williams. Despite arguably having the worst car on the grid, David is undeniably having his best ever season in the top class due to the heroic drives he's been pulling in that AlphaTauri, with many being surprised that he didn't go for the vacant Red Bull seat left by Franco Gamba. He'll hope to continue his impressive momentum into 2022 and hope that next year's AlphaTauri will be a much better car compared to this year. The only question remaining at AlphaTauri is who will partner alongside him. However, it is looking more likely that Miklos Gau will remain with the team for another season unless his performances start to drop massively, which could bring current Formula V Championship leader Santino Andreoli into play. But like with many things in the past, we will have to wait and see. The final team news of today concerns Lamborghini, as they have announced that 5-time race winner Laura Chung will remain with the team for their 2nd ever season. Laura is having an amazing season in 2021, with her arguably having her best ever season in the top class. She currently lies 8th in the Drivers' Championship, 5 points ahead of former teammate Joseph Wellos, and her team Lamborghini lie 5th in the Constructors, 10 points ahead of McLaren. Laura took a gamble on going to Lamborghini in 2021 in the hope that the team would have a decent rookie season in the top class, and it is fair to say that the move has paid off, with Lamborghini having an impressive rookie season, so much so that Laura returned to winning race this season back at the Austrian Grand Prix. She will look to continue her impressive season for the rest of 2021 and hope that Lamborghini can build on their rookie season to go further up the grid in 2022. The only question remaining at Lamborghini is who will partner alongside her, as that has become more interesting than originally thought. Last week in the pilot episode, I mentioned that this year's silly season could be the most straightforward in a long time. However, in the case of 3 teams, that might not be the case after all, as Evan Byrne's departure from Renault may have created a domino effect. Last week I said that Jesus Perrinen was more likely to remain at Renault for another season. However, after Julius Anderson's impressive performance at Hungary last week, it might not be that secure, as both Roman Quarg, who is also a contender for Renault, and Julius Anderson could boot Jesus out of the Renault seat, however potentially not from the top class due to another team he has put down as his second choice, but we will get onto that in a bit. On the other hand, if Julius misses out on a Renault drive to both Jesus Perrinen and Roman Quarg, then surprisingly there is another team that he could end up being a contender for. That team, as you may have figured out, is Lamborghini, as there is a chance that Rahul Patel, despite what I said last week, might not be so secure at Lamborghini given the situation at Renault. However, there is another team that is linked with the whole Renault-Lamborghini situation, which may also surprise you. That team being current Constructors' Championship leaders Red Bull. We mentioned last week that Evan Byrne was more likely going to be a contender to replace Franco Gamba at Red Bull in 2022 as a result of the Irishman leaving Renault at the end of the 2021 season. While that is still the case, however, in terms of who could be his teammate at Red Bull should the Irishman be signed there, it isn't that simple. Last week we mentioned that George Roque was likely to remain at the team for another season, however that isn't as secure as what we thought, as that is due to the Renault-Lamborghini situation. Both Jesus Perinen and Rahul Patel have Red Bull as their second choice, and if either one of them miss out on their number one choice, then they could have a shout at booting George out of Red Bull. If George wants to be retained at Red Bull, then he either needs to hope that Jesus and Rahul get retained at their respective teams, or put in some brilliant performances in the second half of the season to ensure he gets retained at the Milton Keynes based team. It will be fascinating to see what will happen to Renault, Lamborghini and Red Bull during this silly season, as when we all thought that was pretty much done and dusted, it has now become very, very interesting. And that is it for this week's edition of the GP4OC News. The next team news will break next week at the Italian Grand Prix in Monza, who will be announced due to practice next week at the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza, just on the outskirts of Milan.